opportunities, and they're actually, I believe the statistics are that it's shocking. I think there's is it 5 times more likely to actually drown and be involved in water-related issues, which is just, should not be the case. So we're looking to address these issues on these many different levels. And in working with the coalition, we hope that we can really expand our efforts and bring in more of the community. And there is an actual legislation running through the New York State legislature, which is geared towards mandating water safety education in New York schools right now.
That would make such a huge impact by just, it's amazing how people just don't know very basic things. And if you know what to look for, you can avoid so many dangerous situations. And that would be phenomenal. The other thing is, it's interesting. I wonder, more surfers should take up water safety courses as well. I've had to rescue numerous people in the water. Most recent was in September, and no lifeguards were on duty, but surfers were around. And in many ways, surfers are ones who are saving a lot of people in the water when that happens. And I wonder if there's more of a need, or we should be promoting more surfers to take some sort of course, at least CPR at the minimum.
Exactly. And I think that's a good example of some of the other things that will kind of spawn out of this campaign. We're starting with this advocacy piece because, it's going through the works, and we think we can get it pushed. But we're also thinking beyond that. It's how can we get more pool access in Rockaway so that young people can actually go to a swimming lesson? How can we engage people like the surfing community to have more skills and have that access to your point, to training, so that if there are issues, there's more people able to respond? And how can we just get the word out of, to be careful and to mind yourself? And to your point, even surf etiquette, right? That reminder is there for a reason. It's so important. It can keep people safe in the water.
It's interesting. I think a lot about beaches in Australia or even Europe. There's just so much more culture around the beach, I feel like, and there's more understanding of the ocean. There's more resources poured into it too for safety, because so many people do use it. Whereas here it's tons of people use the beach, but it's only for 2 months. It's real short. Whereas other places like Australia and whatnot are it's year-round beach culture to a certain extent. It's interesting how we really need to rethink how we just educate people and provide information to them and provide resources. There's no access to CPR kits anywhere near, if you're on the beach and you need to access something at a moment's notice, nothing is available. Nothing is around to get help. Whereas if you were certain city beaches in Sydney, they have everything available there that you could possibly need. Wonder. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, and there's a lot to be learned that what you're bringing up is a really important part of, the work that we do. And our coalition is actually thinking about other case studies in other cities in the world and how others are approaching it, because it's a great way to learn and see what's effective. So I think it's a good point to look at these other cities and really understand what's working for them. And I also, one other thing I think is quite significant about this is that this campaign is for people of all ages, right? Because we want to also be realistic that, just because you're an adult doesn't mean you've had the opportunity to swim. It doesn't mean that you're safe out there in the ocean. So we do want to really encourage people to take advantage of these opportunities. But saying that, a lot of what we're doing is also focused on young people, because I think it's an opportunity to get into schools. It's an opportunity to reach people through programs in a little bit more of a heightened way. And there's also the argument that, even just in climate change in general, that the children kind of hold the answer, right? It's if you can reach the children and get them activated around this, it's such a great way of just getting the momentum going. So we hope that we can really start to drive impact through that. And one of the other ways that we think about this is through our youth program. So we do have a youth program where we partner with local surfing schools, locals being one of them, and we take young people out to surf who potentially haven't had the opportunity to learn. Because we all love surfing, but we've probably spent a lot of money on our boards and our wetsuits and surfing lessons and surf trips. And, not everybody is able to take advantage of all those opportunities. So we're trying to really remove some of the barriers of having this beautiful beach on your doorstep, but not being able to get out there and enjoy it, and to not know how to do it safely. And, with the kind of knowledge and support of learning to surf. And of course, like learning to surf in a group is awesome, right? So we want to kind of help spread that stoke. And then we pair it with the beach cleanup so that people are kind of making that connection between loving the ocean and feeling that desire and feeling compelled to protect it. And nurturing that like at a younger age is kind of our approach to nurturing the next generation of coastal defenders, potentially the future chair in there somewhere.
I like that. So now what should we be looking for next coming up from Surfrider? What are some urgent things that we need to be on the lookout for, and what will be coming down the pipeline?
Sure. So definitely keep an eye.
No pun intended, by the way.
Oh, yeah. The pipelines. Don't get me started on that. Well, a couple things to keep an eye on. Definitely keep an eye on the plastic pollution, the Rise Above Plastic program, because we have the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act very much in motion right now. There's also a bill coming back, reintroduction of the straws bill, which is now straws on request. And that has had some amendments so that it's more inclusive after having worked more with disability advocacy groups, thinking about how we can represent the environmental needs, but also do so in a way that enables people to be able to safely eat out and be able to use straws as needed. So that's got a few adjustments there that we're hoping to be able to pass this time. And then we also have a mini bottles bill. So asking hotels to start to adapt and move away from having these little tiny toiletry bottles. Marriott International announced that if they get rid of them, it's going to be 500 million bottles a year that are saved. And that's one hotel company. So that's something that we're really hoping to pass.
For hotels, it just makes sense. Like, why do you keep buying these little bottles of soap when you can just buy it in bulk, put the little storage thing right in the shower? That's nice and easy and save a ton of money, I imagine.
Exactly. Like it's
unless they're getting it for free.
True, but it just seems like so antiquated, right? There's all these little bottles flying around when there's a better way to do it. So there's action alerts set up for both the straws and the mini bottles bill, which we hope to be able to implement shortly.
Now, I thought for a minute when I read this that you were talking about the bar bottles of alcohol.
I feel like there'd be more pushback on that one.
Well, they should be glass instead of plastic anyway.
They absolutely should. Maybe that's something that we'll need to also put on our list of things to go after. Yeah, and then the other things that I would say are really important to keep an eye on is that, unfortunately, you mentioned the Williams pipeline at the beginning of the interview, and we celebrated the victory last year. We have heard some rumblings that Williams has not gone away quite as we expected.
It's like a hydra. You just cut off one head and another one comes back.
Exactly.
It's like crazy.
Exactly. It's not completely unsurprising because unfortunately this is kind of the nature of fighting fossil fuel companies and the industry in general. And we do still have our coalition mobilized. Again, like I feel like so much of how we operate in these spaces is through coming together with other organizations and working with them in allegiance against these issues. So our coalition is still very much mobilized and going strong and really getting in there right away just now, trying to figure out what's going on and how we can take action. So I think there could be quite a few things coming out in the next couple of weeks that might really be something that we would love to have support on. And similarly with offshore drilling, with the Biden administration coming through, they signed into effect a moratorium on new offshore drilling, which again, feels very much like a victory. But until it's off the table completely, it's something that we can't quite relish and celebrate just yet. So we're pushing that to become something that's more permanent and hopefully more expansive so that we can also start to think not just about new offshore drilling in the Atlantic region, which is, the area that's kind of most sort of in close proximity to us, but thinking about how we can also protect other regions like the Arctic that's been, quite in the top of line in the media recently. So more to come on that too. And, our fossil fuel fights they're long and they're hard and it's fighting some of the most powerful industries in the world, but we have fought them back several times. It's just more about like, we just need to stay in this.
Yeah, well, it really, luckily we've been able to skirt it, but, we're just one election away, I think, always when this can happen or change. And we're in that period where we really do need to start transitioning our energy needs. I got to ask, what does Surfrider feel? How does Surfrider feel about nuclear energy? I'm curious. Like it is a clean energy to a certain extent, and it can. Sorry, left field question, by the way, but it's just curious. I've been reading a little bit about it recently, so I'm just they're on different takes of alternative energy as well.
Yeah, and it's been interesting. When we think about how we fight these fossil fuel companies, it's not okay just to go in and rip their plan up into pieces and be like, we don't want this. You also have to come at it with some solutions and like what else can be put in place to kind of, continue to meet the necessary needs of the world. Often the needs of the fossil fuel industry are inflated, but, we do have power needs. So it's also about thinking about like what exists in the more green renewable energy space that we can shift into. And where we focus mostly is actually being in geothermal. So that was one of the responses that we put forth for the Williams campaign, was that people need to start thinking more about geothermal and how they can retrofit their houses. And if you're building new properties, how you can consider that as an adaptation.
Out in Long Island, you could do it. Difficult to do here in the city, I think. But I have a friend who in the UK who did that with his property and was able to dig his pipe deep enough, and it was able to give him all the energy he needed and warm water and everything. It was pretty incredible how it all worked, and he's saving so much money.
Yeah, exactly. Insane. It can be a wee bit of an expense up front, but it does actually like pan out. So really thinking about geothermal. And then the other renewable solution that we're currently really exploring is offshore wind. And that's where our expertise and knowledge around nuclear isn't necessarily as extensive as these other solutions, mostly because, we are focused very much on the offshore component. That being said, Surfrider has really sort of expanded its vision of like what climate change is and how to respond to it. And again, thinking about how we work with other organizations, it's not going to be enough to tackle climate change by just thinking about offshore component and just thinking about these issues in a silo. Like we really need to understand how to integrate it and plug things into this bigger picture if we want to address climate change and understand how everything kind of works in that integrated way. So with offshore wind, it's been really interesting because we used to have this blanket kind of no build out and no industrialization in the ocean. Yeah. And as things have progressed and unfortunately climate change has continued to become worse and worse and more of a threat to us, we've adjusted that to be more of a case-by-case basis. And by that, we mean let's understand the scope of the project. Let's understand the site that they're proposing. Let's speak with developers and stakeholders and have an understanding of the way that the drilling takes place. Like, is it something that's like horizontal hydraulic drilling that goes underneath the seabed? Is it something that dredges the entire area? What are the blocks like that they use on the ocean beds? Like, do they allow rehabilitation of the oysters and the crustaceans? Or are they going to always disturb that area and never allow it to rehabilitate? Like, these are all the important questions.
And most importantly, will it affect the waves?
Wow.
That's it. I mean, that's the number one for surfers, right?
Will it affect the waves? I should just say that everything that we work on is going to affect the waves, and you'll all come out in masses.
In a good way, of course.
In a good way, yes, of course. But yeah, I mean, these are the things. And, even thinking about the way it impacts animals, right? The migration paths of the right whale, that's an example of up in Rhode Island with the offshore project up there. Developers agreed to stop construction to let the right whales go past. And like, that's an example of like how you can work in a sort of compromise with developers and have responsible developers work on projects and sort of get those leases in the first place so that you can have that type of dialogue and sit at the same table during the development process. So we're really trying to like get into these conversations early enough to help shape how things are moving forward. And, there's many other organizations in New York